The chamber of the Galactic Council floated silently above a dying star. Its light burning weak and cold, the walls of the great hall shimmered with faint blue energy, and thousands of alien delegates sat in a ring of gold and steel. Whispering with nervous voices, every empire was there, every leader who once mocked Earth, and now not one of them dared to speak too loudly. Something was coming, something they did not understand. The silence in the room was heavy, pressing against the air like a storm about to break. The old speaker, his skin pale like cracked stone, tapped his staff against the floor. The sound echoed across the chamber. "The signal is confirmed," he said slowly, his voice trembling despite the centuries of power he carried. "Humanity has moved." A cold wave passed through the room. Chairs creaked as delegates shifted uneasily. Screens flickered to life, showing the outer border of the galaxy, the place where the message came from. A single encrypted pulse sent in silence, a warning. A tall reptilian delegate slammed his fist on the table, his fangs sharp under the light. "They dare approach our border," he hissed. "We warned them what would happen if they ever built beyond their world." An avian commander with dark feathers leaned forward. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's not a fleet, it's one ship." "Just one," the words hung in the air like ice. "One ship, not an armada, not a convoy. Just one vessel cutting through space like a blade. No escort, no formation, no fear." The council screens expanded the image. A black shape sliding through the starfield. Massive, silent, swallowing the light around it. The system's early warning fleets had already gone offline. No distress calls, no debris, just silence. The insectoid ambassador clicked his mandibles nervously. "No ship can move like that," he said, his voice rising. "Nothing crosses neutral zones without detection." "They should have been stopped." The speaker raised a trembling hand. "They were stopped," he said softly, "but the fleets never returned." The room fell quiet again, as if the air itself froze. A young delegate from a smaller world stood, her hands shaking. "We should not panic," she said, trying to sound brave. "They are only human." The room erupted with bitter laughter. Not because they thought it was funny, but because none of them believed those words anymore. A shadow passed across the massive window that overlooked the dying star. The council turned their eyes to the live feed again. The object was closer now. The sensors struggled to read it. Its structure didn't match anything in the database. Not a destroyer, not a dreadnought, not even a planet killer. It was beyond classification. The engineers whispered one word across the private channels. Titan, an admiral with silver armor, stood from his seat. "We outnumber them 1,000 to 1, he said with forced confidence. "Our combined fleets will crush whatever they send." But his hands were clenched tight behind his back. Because he had seen the reports. He had seen what one of those ships did to the Nerak fleet. An entire battle group erased in 20 seconds. No survivors, no escape pods, not even wreckage. The council began shouting over one another, panic rising like a tide. Some demanded immediate surrender, others screamed for war. Old treaties were thrown across the tables, centuries of arrogance cracked like glass. The speaker hit his staff again. "Order!" he barked, though his voice trembled. "We need facts. Not fear." But fear was already crawling through every corner of the room. On the outer defense line, a commander watched from his bridge as the Titan entered sensor range. His crew froze as the black ship came closer, its shape simple, smooth, with no banners, no glowing engines, no radio chatter. It moved like a shadow that decided to be real. "Open a channel," he ordered, his voice shaking. "Send warning protocol 1. "Channel open," replied the comms officer. But the ship did not respond. It didn't even acknowledge the transmission. Then the lights on the Titan shifted. A soft pulse of red rippled across its hull. The commander felt the hair on his neck rise. "Fire a warning shot," he whispered. His officers hesitated. He shouted louder. "Fire!" A single energy beam from the alien fleet hit the Titan, and the beam bent like light through water, sliding off its black surface, vanishing into the void. And then, in the silence that followed, the Titan spoke. Not in words, not in language, but in a deep sound that shook the bridge like thunder. The commander felt his heart pound in his chest. He couldn't breathe, and then his entire fleet went dark. No sound, no alarms, just darkness. Back in the council chamber, alarms began to flash red. The Titan had crossed the border without resistance. Fleets were vanishing, entire sectors going silent. Delegates screamed, some tried to run, others froze in their seats. The speaker stood alone at the center, staring at the star map, watching the black icon move closer to the capital. "Why are they doing this?" whispered the avian commander, her feathers trembling. "What do they want?" No one answered. Because everyone knew the truth. Humans didn't send warnings anymore. They didn't send fleets to talk. The last war had taught the galaxy something they had tried to forget. When humanity moves its titans, there is no negotiation, only silence. A deep sound echoed through the council chamber. A transmission. The speaker raised a shaking hand to accept it. The room went dark. A single human voice filled the hall. Calm, slow, certain. "You called us weak," the voice said. "You fired first." The room held its breath. "Now, we answer." The screens lit up with the Titan's massive silhouette as it entered the inner system. Its engines were silent, its power unreadable, and the dying star's light faded behind its shadow. The speaker closed his eyes, centuries of arrogance collapsing in a single moment. The galaxy had spent lifetimes laughing at humans, mocking their slow rise, and now they faced the truth. The Titan wasn't coming to talk, it was coming to end everything, and nothing in the galaxy could stop it. The council couldn't even breathe as the black shape filled every screen, shaking the hall to its core. The silence before the arrival was over. The nightmare had begun. The alien border defense fleet hung in the dark like a wall of steel. Thousands of ships lined up in a perfect formation. Engines humming low, weapons armed, and crews holding their breath. Every commander knew what they were facing, but none dared to say it out loud. The Titan-class warship was coming closer, its black shape crawling through the void like a silent predator. It didn't need speed, it didn't need tricks. It carried something far more dangerous, certainty, on the bridge of the Varnak flagship. Commander Reese stood with his hands pressed tight against the control rail. His eyes locked on the main screen. The Titan grew larger every second, its hull smooth and dark, swallowing stars as it moved. No visible weapons, no signal, no escort. The kind of silence that only meant death. "They're not even hiding," his second-in-command whispered. Her voice dry. "They want us to see them." Reese didn't answer. "Because she was right." "Open communication again," Reese ordered, his voice sharp. "Tell them this is restricted space. They are violating galactic border law." The comm officer tapped the console. Static filled the room. The Titan gave no response. Only a soft low pulse rolled through the speakers. Like a heartbeat echoing through metal walls, some crew members flinched. Others pressed their hands against their ears. The sound wasn't just noise. It felt like something crawling under their skin. A young officer at the tactical station whispered, "Sir, that pulse just knocked out our scanner's third layer." Reese turned sharply. "How?" The officer shook his head. "It's not a weapon, it's just—" "Energy, sir?" The commander looked back at the screen. The Titan didn't speed up, it just kept coming, steady and cold. A nervous pilot muttered under his breath. "It's too big." The bridge went quiet. No one corrected him. The ship was colossal, far beyond the scale of any dreadnought they had ever seen. The fleet had more numbers, more firepower, but none of that mattered when fear had already entered their lungs. Riss clenched his jaw. "Prepare the first volley," he ordered. "We strike before it crosses the inner line." Across the fleet, ships adjusted their positions. Shields flared to full strength, cannons aligned. The void outside burned faint blue as energy built up. The Titan finally crossed the invisible line, and Riss lifted his hand. "Fire!" he shouted, and the void exploded in light, beams, missiles, plasma, all slammed into the black hull of the Titan. The bridge filled with flashing sensors, alarms, and cheers of nervous crewmen. But when the light faded, the Titan was still there, untouched. The beams had bent away, the missiles had disappeared in silent flashes, and the plasma streams were absorbed like water into sand. The black hull shimmered faintly, like it was drinking the energy, and then it pulsed again, one heartbeat, one wave, and every alien ship's lights flickered at once. "Shields are fluctuating," someone shouted. "I'm losing control of the core," another screamed. "Weapons offline." Reese slammed his fist against the rail. "Hold formation," he barked, but even his voice cracked. On the main screen, the Titan turned slightly. Just slightly, and the fleet froze. It wasn't firing, it wasn't speaking. It was looking at them, like a predator deciding where to bite first. A heavy silence filled the bridge, broken only by the low hum of dying systems. "Why aren't they firing back?" the second in command whispered. "Why aren't they talking?" Reese stared at the screen, his breath short, "Because they don't have to." A sudden flash ripped through the void as one of the forward cruisers exploded without sound. Not from an external shot, but from the inside. Its entire energy core overloaded and burst like a sun. Debris scattered, the rest of the fleet panicked. "It's in the system," the tactical officer shouted. "Something hacked the cores." One by one, ships began losing power. Their shields collapsed, their engines died. Reese grabbed the console, shouting into the comms, "All ships, break formation, fall back now." The fleet scattered like dust in the wind. But their escape meant nothing. The Titan didn't chase, it didn't move faster. It simply existed in the center, and ships died around it like candles burning out. Inside the bridge, the lights dimmed, the hum of the engine faded. The crew stared at the screen as their own ship systems collapsed. "Core meltdown in progress," the AI whispered, its voice cold and calm. "Evacuation advised." Panic flooded the room. Officers ran to escape pods. Alarms screamed. Reese stood still, watching the Titan, its hull glowing faintly with lines of red light now, like veins of fire. "Sir," his second shouted. "We have to go." Reese didn't answer. He knew it was already too late. Escape pods wouldn't matter. The Titan wasn't fighting a fleet. It was dismantling it, like peeling away layers of an insect. The fleet's largest carrier imploded, its scream of metal echoing through the comm. Ships tried to jump out of the system, but their coordinates scrambled. Their drives collapsed one by one. They vanished, not into hyperspace, but into pieces. A distorted voice suddenly filled the fleet comms. Human, deep, calm. "We warned you," it said. "You fired first." The bridge shook. The lights died completely. And the only thing left was the red glow of the Titan, stretching across the void like a god staring at ants. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, the speaker stared at the live feed, his hand gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles cracked. The alien fleets were gone. Thousands of ships destroyed in minutes. No battle, no strategy, just silence. One delegate screamed. "This is impossible," another shouted. "It's a trick." It has to be. But they all saw the same thing. One ship had erased an entire defense wall without firing a single shot. An avian admiral whispered, her voice almost lost in the chaos. "This isn't war," she said. "This is punishment." The speaker turned slowly to the council members, their faces pale and shaking. For centuries they had believed humanity to be weak, loud and slow, and now they faced the truth. Humanity had built something the galaxy couldn't understand. A Titan-class warship that didn't fight battles. It ended them before they began, far above the Council world. Satellites picked up new signals, more shapes emerging from the dark. The Titan was no longer alone. The humans were coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. The silence was over, the storm had arrived. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos, lights flashing red, screens showing fleet after fleet going dark. Alien delegates shouting over one another, panic moving like fire through dry grass. The image of the Titan-class warship floated on the main holoscreen, black and silent, surrounded by the scattered remains of what had once been the most powerful border defense fleet in the quadrant. Its hull glowed faint red now, like a sleeping monster that had only opened one eye. The speaker slammed his staff against the floor. "Order!" he barked, but his voice cracked. The sound drowned beneath the flood of fear. The delegates ignored him, shouting accusations. Threats, desperate plans. You provoked them, a scaled ambassador hissed, pointing a trembling claw at the avian delegation. You fired the first shot. The avian commander rose, her feathers ruffled with rage. We followed council orders, she snapped. If we hadn't fired, they would have crossed our border without a word. A massive insectoid ambassador clicked his mandibles. They didn't cross, he growled. They destroyed. And now they are still coming, the speaker tried again. Louder, silence! His voice finally broke through. The chamber stilled, breaths heavy, eyes locked on the holoscreen. The Titan floated closer to the council's inner territories, ignoring everything thrown its way. They didn't fire a single weapon, whispered the young delegate from a neutral world. Her voice shaking, they just moved through the fleets like they were made of air. The screen flickered. New data streams came in, showing ships from neighboring sectors falling back. Others refusing to engage, entire defense lines collapsing without a fight. The fear wasn't just here, it was spreading. The council's military advisors rushed to the center platform, their uniforms dark and marked with old battle scars. We need to combine every fleet left, one of them said. We cannot let it reach the inner systems, the avian commander snapped. It will crush us like the others, another general shouted back. Then what do you suggest? We kneel before them. The speaker raised a hand, his voice low but clear. We have to understand what they want. The insectoid ambassador turned sharply. Do you think this is a negotiation? He hissed. They haven't spoken. They haven't asked for anything. They're just coming. A deep silence fell again. Only the hum of the dying star outside filled the air. The council chamber felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. Then the holoscreen changed. A live feed from a long-range probe flickered into focus. The Titan had stopped, but it was not alone anymore behind it. More shapes emerged from the dark, shadows bigger than battle cruisers. Hundreds of them, their formation clean and cold. Not like a chaotic invasion fleet, but like a machine. The delegates gasped as the scale became clear. This is not one ship, someone whispered. It's an entire fleet, but it wasn't just their number that made the room cold. It was the silence, no transmissions, no banners, no chaos, only dark metal moving as one. On the far side of the room, a young analyst ran to the council floor, holding a data pad tight to his chest. We found something, he said, his voice rapid and shaky. The Titan fleet's path, it's direct, straight to us. No detours, no strikes on colonies, no conquest. They are coming here. The speaker stared at the screen. Why? He whispered. Why straight to us? The avian commander slammed her claw against the table. Because they don't need the colonies, she said. They only need to break the head, and the body falls. The speaker felt the truth of her words settle like a blade against his throat. A sudden crackle of static filled the room, and the massive holoscreen went black, then lit up with a single image, a human symbol, an old Terran flag, stripped of color, black and white. Behind it the outline of the Titan's hull, and a voice, calm and human, filled the hall. You thought we wouldn't remember, it said slowly, each word carrying weight. You thought the silence meant weakness. The speaker gripped the edge of the table. The voice was not shouting. It didn't need to. It was colder than steel. You built walls, the voice continued. You built fleets. And you called us primitive. The chamber held its breath. You drew your borders with blood, and when we stayed silent, you believed we had no teeth. The insectoid ambassador leaned back, his body trembling. Turn it off, he whispered, but no one moved. You fired first, the voice said. And the Titan's image flickered behind the flag, its red glow brighter now. Now, you face what you made. The screen went black again, leaving only the sound of shallow breathing across the room. The silence that followed was worse than the message itself. The avian commander lowered her head. We can't fight that, she whispered. We saw what one did to the border. Imagine what hundreds will do. The speaker slowly sat down, his hands heavy, and yet, he said softly, we have no choice. A strategist stood up, his voice trembling but determined. We still have the capital defense ring, he said. We have orbital platforms, planetary cannons, hidden stations. We can make them bleed, the insectoid ambassador snapped. You didn't see them out there, his voice cracked. They don't bleed. Messages started flashing across the side screens. Planetary governors screaming for protection. Border worlds evacuating. Fleets refusing orders. Panic spreading like a disease. The Council had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Untouchable, proud, now every empire was begging, hiding, breaking apart, and the humans hadn't even fired a full volley yet. The speaker closed his eyes, the weight of centuries on his shoulders. This is no longer about winning, he said softly. This is about surviving. He opened his eyes and looked at the Council. Prepare the final defense line. No one cheered, no one spoke. They only nodded with the kind of silence that comes when hope is already gone. Far away, the Titan fleet turned slightly, its dark shape growing larger on the sensors. Every alien eye in the Council chamber fixed on that screen, as if watching death itself walk toward them. There was no countdown, no warning, no mercy, only the sound of their own fear filling the room. The storm was moving, and the galaxy could not stop it. The alarms across the Galactic Council capital screamed like a storm tearing through metal. Red lights flooded every corridor. Soldiers ran through the streets, ships launched from hangars. Orbital stations powered their cannons. Everything that had been quiet for years was now shaking under the weight of fear. The Titan fleet was coming, and there was no escape. The sound of rushing engines filled the night sky. The planet's shields glowed faint blue, like a fragile shell, trying to protect a dying world. Inside the war room, at the center of the Council Tower, the speaker stood surrounded by commanders and advisors. The massive hollow screen above them showed hundreds of red dots moving in formation toward the system. Behind them floated the shape everyone feared, the Titan-class warship, larger than anything they had ever built. How long? The speaker asked quietly, his voice barely steady. 42 minutes, a tactical officer replied. His eyes locked on the numbers scrolling across the screen. The Titan fleet will breach the outer defense line in 42 minutes. The avian commander leaned forward over the glowing map. Her feathers wet with sweat. We've moved every fleet we have, she said sharply. Every gun, every orbital platform, every soldier. They won't catch us sleeping, the insectoid ambassador hissed under his breath. You saw what one of them did to the border fleet. And now there are hundreds, she snapped back. I know what I saw. The doors opened with a metallic hiss, and the young analyst from before entered with trembling hands. We received another transmission, he said, his voice unsteady. Everyone froze. The last message had made the entire chamber shake. Play it, the speaker ordered. The lights dimmed, and the room went silent. The screen turned black, then a single image appeared. The Titan moving slowly through space, and a voice, human, cold and clear, filled the room. You built your walls to keep us out, the voice said. But walls mean nothing to the storm, the avian commander clenched her fist. The voice continued. We asked for nothing, we stayed silent, and you mistook silence for weakness. The room filled with shallow breaths, some delegates gripping the edges of the table. You lit the fire, the voice said. Now, you will learn what silence meant. The message ended as suddenly as it began, leaving only the faint hum of the emergency lights. They're not threatening, whispered the insectoid ambassador. They're promising. The speaker felt the cold sink deeper into the room. There was no rage in the human voice, only a calm certainty that crushed hope. A hologram of the defense commander flickered to life. His armor dark, his eyes tired but fierce. All orbital stations are armed, he reported. Planetary shields at maximum, rail cannons ready, interceptor squadrons deployed. The speaker nodded slowly. Then we fight. The commander hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod and vanished. Outside the planet's orbit, the stars shifted. The Titan fleet appeared like black spears, cutting through the void. Their formation perfect, silent, without the chaotic chatter of normal fleets. Hundreds of ships moved as one, and at the center was the Titan, its black hull reflecting nothing, its shape swallowing the stars behind it. The first defense ring opened fire, Beams of energy and kinetic rounds shot across space like blinding rain. The dark fleet didn't dodge, it didn't scatter, it simply advanced. Rail rounds bent and broke against their shields. Plasma cannons vanished in the void. Massive explosions lit the darkness but did nothing. The Titan pulsed once, a heartbeat that rippled through the entire defense grid, and power began to die. "Shields are failing," a voice screamed through the comm. "They're inside the network! Recalibrate!" the defense commander shouted, but the enemy didn't give them time. One by one, the orbital cannons went offline. Platforms darkened like dying stars. A dreadnought at the front line turned red, its engines overloading, and then it exploded in silence. On the Council world's surface, civilians watched the night sky glow red. The defense grid flickered above them like cracking glass. Soldiers shouted orders in the streets. Shuttles filled with people lifted off. But everyone knew the truth. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The storm wasn't a fleet they could outrun. It was a wall closing in. In the war room, the speaker stared at the screen as the defense ring fell in minutes. "This isn't a war," he whispered. "This is a judgment." The avian commander turned to him, her voice sharp but shaking. "Then what do we do?" the insectoid ambassador hissed. "Pray!" The second defense ring activated. Massive planetary cannons rose from the ground, firing beams straight into the void. The shots hit the Titan, but again, the energy bent like smoke. The red lines on its hull brightened like veins of fire. And then for the first time, the Titan responded, a single pulse of energy. Not a beam, not a missile, just a pulse. And half of the orbital ring disintegrated in an instant. The shockwave shook the entire planet. Buildings rattled, alarms screamed louder. "Shields are collapsing," the tactical officer shouted. "We're losing power grid control." The speaker clenched his fists, his heart pounding. "Keep firing," he ordered. "We will not beg." But in the back of his mind, he already knew the outcome. They all did. A sudden silence cut through the noise. All communications went dead. The screens flickered, and the Titan's image filled the entire room, the human flag behind it like a ghost. The same calm voice spoke again, louder now, closer. "This is not a negotiation," it said. "You fired first." Every delegate in the chamber froze. The speaker stared at the screen, unable to breathe. "We end this now," outside. The Titan lowered its front plates, revealing a massive structure glowing with a deep red light, bigger than anything ever built. A weapon that didn't look like a weapon. No one on the planet had words for what they were seeing. Only silence filled the air. The fleet around it parted like shadows, making way for a storm. The defense commander's voice finally came through, broken and shaky. "They're charging something," he whispered. "I've never seen power like this." The speaker closed his eyes for a moment. Every wall they had built, every fleet they had trusted, every weapon they had forged, it meant nothing now. The Titan's glow reached its peak. The skies above the Council world turned red. The shields cracked like glass under a hammer. The ground shook. The war room went dark for a heartbeat, and then, with a sound like the universe tearing apart, the beam fell, not like a strike, but like a quiet judgment. When the light faded, the first and second defense rings were gone. Orbital stations reduced to floating ash. The Council world's shield shattered. The Titan hung in the sky, silent again, its work done. In the war room, the delegates sat frozen. The speaker's hands trembled. The avian commander whispered, "We are already beaten." And for the first time in centuries, the Council had no reply. The humans had not spoken with threats or anger, only with power. And the galaxy finally understood what silence truly meant. The sky above the Council world burned red. The Titan's beam had ended the defenses, like a storm crushing a fragile wall. Orbital rings were gone, the shield was broken, and silence hung over the capital, like a shadow that wouldn't move. The people on the streets stared at the black shape floating above the atmosphere. A giant warship unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. It didn't fire again. It didn't need to. Its very presence was a weapon. In the war room, no one moved, no one spoke. The speaker stood at the center table, his hands clenched around the edge, as if holding himself upright. The screens showed only one thing, the Titan, glowing faintly, waiting. The avian commander finally whispered, "Why haven't they finished it?" Her voice was low, brittle. "Because they want us to know," the insectoid ambassador answered, his mandibles clicking. "They want us to see everything before they end it." A comm officer stumbled into the room, pale and sweating. "We're getting something," he said, his voice shaking. "A new transmission." The lights dimmed as the main screen flickered, and then the Titan's image filled the entire wall. Behind it, the black and white human flag. A voice, calm and human, filled the room again. "We gave you silence," the voice said slowly. "You answered with war." The speaker felt his throat tighten. The voice was not shouting. It was quiet, too quiet. "You called us primitive," the voice continued. "You called us weak. And you believed your walls would keep us out." The avian commander clenched her claws. The voice grew colder. "But walls mean nothing to those who build storms." The screen shifted, showing real-time feeds from across the system. Every defense fleet gone, every colony's transmission dark. The Titan hadn't just defeated the Council. It had erased their entire defense network like chalk in the rain. A military strategist slammed his hand on the table. "We have ground cannons," he shouted. "We still have a chance." The speaker turned to him slowly. "Against that," he asked quietly, pointing at the Titan. "Against something that hasn't even fired twice." The strategist looked away. No one argued, because they all knew it was true. The planet trembled as more human ships broke through the clouds. Smaller than the Titan, but still larger than anything in the Council's fleet. They moved with perfect coordination, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Each one slid into position above key cities, orbital elevators, military bases, and shipyards. The insectoid ambassador's voice cracked. "They're occupying the planet," the avian commander whispered. "No," she said slowly. "They're showing us we can't stop them." The Titan pulsed again, and every system on the planet blinked out. The lights died, the cannons froze, the shields flickered and failed completely. The entire world went dark. A planet that had once controlled the galaxy now knelt in silence. Even the stars above looked smaller, dimmer. As if they too feared the ship hanging in the sky, the speaker looked at his people, their faces pale, their pride shattered. "We spent centuries thinking we were untouchable," he said softly. "But they were watching us all along." The avian commander slammed her fist down. "Then what now?" she demanded. "Do we kneel?" The speaker stared at the Titan, its red glow brighter now. "We don't have a choice," he whispered. Outside, the first human boarding pods entered the atmosphere. They moved fast, cutting through the air like spears. No resistance, no interception, because there was nothing left to resist. They landed on the Council's main plaza with a sound like thunder. The ground shook, soldiers ran to their posts. But their weapons didn't respond. Their systems were dead, the insectoid ambassador hissed. "They've taken the grid." From the smoke of the landing pods, human soldiers emerged in perfect formation, armored in black and grey, their steps heavy but precise, their faces hidden behind mirrored helmets. They didn't shout, they didn't fire, they simply advanced. The crowd of alien civilians that had gathered near the plaza fell silent. Even fear itself seemed to hold its breath. In the war room, the speaker watched the feed as the humans walked toward the base of the Council Tower. "They're not here to fight," the avian commander said quietly. "They've already won." The speaker nodded slowly. "This is their message," he said. "This is how empires die." A soldier burst into the room, his uniform torn. "They've reached the tower," he shouted, panic in his voice. "Our defense units won't activate. They're walking straight through the gates." The speaker closed his eyes. For centuries, the tower had been the symbol of power. No army had ever breached it, and now it fell without a single shot fired. The Titan pulsed again, and the voice returned. "You called us silent," it said, but silence was the warning. The image of the Titan filled the wall, its black shape casting shadows across the faces of everyone in the room. "Now you will hear us." The doors to the war room opened with a hiss, and a group of human soldiers entered, silent, weapons lowered but ready. The speaker turned slowly, his heart pounding. A single human officer stepped forward, removing his helmet, his eyes calm, cold, but not hateful. "This is over," he said simply, his voice steady. "Surrender the council." The avian commander took a step forward. "You can't just—" The officer raised one finger, and she stopped. The power in the room shifted. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't a discussion. The speaker stepped forward, his old voice trembling. "If we don't," he whispered, "then what?" The human officer met his eyes. "Then we erase what's left." The words weren't shouted, but they carried the weight of entire worlds. The speaker looked at the screens, black, silent, empty, and he knew there was nothing left to protect. The room was quiet for a long time. Only the distant hum of the Titan could be felt, like the heartbeat of something far larger than any of them. Finally, the speaker nodded slowly. "We surrender," he said softly, and the words hung in the air like the final breath of an empire. The human officer gave a short nod, as if everything had unfolded exactly as expected. Outside, the Titan dimmed its red glow, but it did not leave. It hovered above the planet like a crown no one wanted to wear. The humans didn't need to destroy the world. They had already broken it. And as the first human flag rose on the council plaza, the galaxy realized that silence had always belonged to humanity. They just chose when to break it, and when they did, nothing could stand in their way. The sun rose weakly over the council capital, its light dim against the shadow of the Titan-class warship that hung above the planet like a silent god. The city below was quiet, not the normal kind of quiet, but the kind that came after something had been broken so completely it could not be fixed. Streets that had once echoed with the pride of an empire now carried only the low hum of human machines. Black banners and armored vehicles lined the plaza. The symbol of the council was gone, replaced by a single human flag swaying in the cold wind inside the council tower. The chamber that had once controlled the galaxy now felt small, almost hollow. The speaker sat at the end of the long table, his hands folded in front of him, his voice dry from sleepless hours. "How many fleets remain?" he asked, his eyes fixed on the floor. The avian commander shook her head, her feathers hanging dull. "None that matter," she said softly. "What's left refuses to fight, or has already surrendered." The insectoid ambassador clicked his mandibles slowly. "We were the rulers," he whispered, "and now we are prisoners on our own world." The sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor. Growing louder, every delegate turned as the doors opened. Human soldiers stepped inside with the same cold precision as before. Behind them walked the same human officer from the night before, his helmet under his arm. His gaze steady, his steps calm. He did not need to shout. His presence filled the room like gravity. "The council will convene," he said simply, and no one dared to refuse. The speaker looked up slowly. "You have already taken everything," he said, his voice hoarse. "What else is left to say?" The officer met his eyes. "This is not a discussion," he replied. "This is the beginning of something new." The avian commander leaned forward, her claws tapping against the table. "You expect us to rule under you," she spat. "We won't." The officer tilted his head slightly. "Then you won't rule at all." A deep silence fell over the room, the weight of the Titan above pressing down on their chests. The officer placed a small black device on the table. It projected a map of the galaxy, but this time the borders were different. Hundreds of glowing red lines spread across the stars, marking systems and worlds that had already surrendered. "The old council is over," he said calmly. "From this day, the galaxy will not be ruled by your fear, but by our control." The insectoid ambassador slammed his claw against the table. "Control is just another word for conquest," he hissed. The officer leaned closer, his eyes narrowing just enough to make the room feel colder. "Then call it what it is," he said, "because you lost the right to choose the name the moment you fired first." Outside, the Titan moved slightly, its massive shadow shifting over the city like a storm cloud. People on the ground froze, watching it as if the sky itself might fall. Loudspeakers crackled with a human voice announcing new orders, curfews and new law. No one protested. Because everyone understood what the Titan could do if it wanted to. In the chamber, the speaker rose slowly to his feet, his body shaking but his eyes steady. "You will rule with fear," he said, his voice quiet but sharp. "And fear never lasts forever." The officer didn't flinch. "You ruled with arrogance," he replied. "And arrogance fell in one night." The speaker clenched his fists. "Then know this," he whispered. "We will remember this day." The officer gave a small nod. "Good," he said. "So will we." A sudden noise cut through the room. The massive windows behind them turned red. The Titan had activated its main weapon again, the glow spreading across the hull like veins of fire. The avian commander stepped back. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Her voice rising, the officer didn't look away. "Demonstration," he said simply far above. The Titan turned its main cannon not toward the planet, but toward a nearby moon, once home to a council shipyard. A single beam fired, silent and clean. The moon cracked like glass, split into two burning halves, its pieces scattering into the void. The chamber shook from the shockwave. Everyone stared in frozen terror. "That was a shipyard," the speaker whispered. The officer nodded. "It was." The avian commander's feathers trembled. "You didn't need to do that," she hissed. The officer's voice remained calm. "You needed to see that we don't need to fight to end everything." No one argued after that. On the streets, the people looked up at the glowing debris drifting in the sky. The silence of the city deepened. The Titan lowered its power again, the glow fading back into the black of its armor. The message was clear. Humanity didn't just win. They owned the silence after the war. The officer stepped away from the table. "Leaving the map behind, you will sign the treaty," he said. "You will hand over all fleets. Shipyards and military control. Your laws will end, and ours will begin." The speaker stared at the glowing red lines on the map, each one a reminder of the power hanging above them. "You could have destroyed us," the insectoid ambassador whispered. "Why didn't you?" The officer paused for a moment, then turned to him. "Because we don't want your ashes," he said. "We want your obedience." The room was silent, every word heavy. Hours later, on the plaza beneath the Titan's shadow, the speaker stood before a massive crowd, human soldiers surrounding the platform, their black armor gleaming under the dim sun. The people of the galaxy watched the live broadcast from every corner of their broken empire. The speaker raised a shaking hand, and with the weight of a crumbling world, he signed the treaty. The seal of the council shattered, and a new emblem burned into the surface. Above him, the Titan shifted, its massive engines humming like a storm warning. Its shadow stretched across the city like a crown, but it did not fire. It didn't have to. The war was over. Humanity had done what no empire had ever done before. They had made the galaxy kneel without begging for it. The officer stepped to the front of the stage, his voice carrying through the plaza and across the galaxy. "You called us weak," he said, calm and steady. "You laughed when we built in silence, and now silence rules you." The crowd said nothing. No one dared to. The Titan remained above, silent and unmoving. Its shadow burned into every mind, every world, every empire, a reminder of what humanity had become. And as the stars shone faintly through the dark, the galaxy understood that the war had not ended with a scream, but with a single quiet truth. When humanity speaks, the stars listen, and when humanity moves, the galaxy trembles. And now they ruled the silence itself.